Greetings, guys and ghouls, and welcome back to the podcast where we talk about all things spooky, dial H for horror.
I am your ghostess with the mostest, Schae.
And I am your favorite final girl, Gina.
Alright, so we're wearing the same outfits as we wore the last video.
Yep, we've just been staying here in the same stinky clothes for a week.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're just batch filming.
New month, same fit.
New month, same fit, yeah.
But yeah,
happy Pride Month.
Yeah,
by the time y'all
are.
see this, it will be Pride Month.
We did it. We made it here. Good times, good times. Hope you all had a good week. I hope we had a good week.
I hope so. We'll know by the time this video is uploaded. If we
had a good week. But yeah, this week we are kicking off our Pride kind of theme with the movies here, which is just movies that have to that exist within the LGBT community, or that specifically are horror movies that focus on that as a theme or something. But this week we are going to be talking about a movie called Bit, which is a vampire movie.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I've never really watched a lot of vampire movies before. This kind of got me into that kind of thing. I'm ready to kind of binge watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer after watching this. I'm not gonna lie.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a good show.
It is, yeah. Show. I know everyone's like Buffy and Angel, so now I'm like, Buffy and Angel.
Never mind.
Ooh.
Sorry.
But we're not talking about that today. But I wanted to ask you, what's some of your favorite mediums or media that features vampires?
Anne Rice. Ooh. Interview with the Vampire. I haven't finished the new TV show that they came out with, but I liked it a lot. It was a lot truer to the books. I love the books. The movie with Tom Cruise is fantastic. It's probably the only role I genuinely like Tom Cruise in, because I don't really like Tom Cruise all that much. He really stepped outside of himself and was a very good Lestat. Talked about Queen of the Damned on here before, about it not being a good movie, but having one of the best people to play Queen Akasha. I just love the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, and I'm a big vampire person. I love vampire. I love Blade. I love I'm blanking on vampires now. I love Blade. I love Dracula. I love Buffy. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then, like I said, I love the Vampire Chronicles. But I feel like horror movies tend to not do a great job with vampires. And then especially after Twilight came out, it kind of screwed that up for vampire movies for a very long time. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not entirely hating on Twilight, because I did recently rewatch them, and they're fun to watch if you're watching them from a campy point of view.
Yes,
they're a lot of fun to watch. But they're definitely not good vampire movies. They're not good vampire movies. It just makes me very angry, because I'm like, everybody compared Stephanie Meyer to Anne Rice when the books came out, and I was like, she's nothing like Anne Rice. Nothing. You guys don't know how deep that lore runs. You don't know how many books that lore runs, and it's not about romance. It's about blood sucking. That's all it's about. It's about opulence, grandeur, and I mean, I love Lestat. He is the brat prince of vampires. He's my favorite vampire. And in the new show, the guy that got to play Lestat, amazing. He does a fantastic job. And the guy that got to play Louis, which I was very happy that they cast a black actor to play Louis.
Yay.
Kills it. He's amazing. Cool. So, yeah.
That's another one I'll have to add to my list now that I'm kind of going through a little bit of a vampire phase.
Yes.
And I'm living for it. And you mentioned Twilight earlier, and I think that's why I never really got into vampires, because I was clearly at the age of the target audience for Twilight when it came out. And if you were a middle schooler at that time, you either were a Twilight kid or you were not. There was no medium. You had to either be a diehard and hating Twilight, or you had to fully accept it into your soul.
It had to be your entire life.
It had to be your whole personality.
Everything you did, yeah. It was the same way for high school. I was in high school when the books came out. I was in high school, and the books were just as popular as the movies. And then when the first movie came out, I was graduating high school, and it was like that. I remember going to see the movie and then going to school the next day, and everybody lost their minds. They're like, "Oh my God, Robert Pattinson and Edward!" And I'm like, I didn't like it all that much, but okay. And funny story about that, I actually turned my sister into a Twihard by dragging her to go see the movie with me.
Oh, wow.
She had never heard of Twilight, didn't care about it, and I was like, I really want to see this movie, and no one wants to go see it with me, so can we go see it? and I just wanted to see it because I read the books, so I wanted to know, like, I'm like the kind of person, like, if I read something, I want to know how it translates into like watchable media. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I just want to see what it's all about. And I went to see the movie. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I hate it. I was like, I absolutely hate this. This is so cheesy, corny. It's making me cringe. Like, hearing this dialogue being said out loud, actually kind of cringy. Yeah. And I was like, not a fan. And I already didn't like Kristen Stewart, but now I actually like Kristen Stewart. And I love Robert Pattinson, so fight me. Best Batman.
Yeah. Agreed. Best Batman. I do have to agree, and that's a lot because I was a very big Christian Bale. We're not talking about Batman.
Yes, no, but yeah, no, vampire movies in general. Like, yeah, I think Twilight kind of threw a lot of salt in their game for a long time. Because they were cool. They were the cool kids on the block, and you had the Blade movies that people really loved, and I did love the Blade movies. Like they were the first two were really good. The last one was. No, the last one was no, but the first two were really good. The first one's the best, but the second one was pretty good. And also had Norman Reedus in it, so that was that was a selling point for me as a Mormon girl. But yeah, no, I definitely enjoy vampires. I love the aesthetic of vampires. The whole opulence, the who wants to live forever? You're old. You never grow old. You drink, you drink blood. That's the downside, but like. They're usually rich and they're glamorous and they're sexy and they can get whatever they want, whenever they want. And I love that whole lore of vampires. And I know people are like, but they're blood-sucking monsters. And I'm like,
it's just something to do on the side.
Yeah, it's just how they survive. Yeah, I mean, like,
everyone's gotta eat.
I mean, you think about it this way. You think like big cats, like me, I think like lions and panthers are really beautiful animals and like they're gorgeous to look at. And then they like rip other animals to shreds.
That's very true.
So like, or sometimes they rip humans to shreds too, depending on how they feel. They maul them. So and I'm like, but they're still beautiful. They're still great to look at. It's the same thing with vampires. Yeah. That way. They're beautiful to look at. You don't necessarily want to be left alone in a room with one.
You're not going to pet it.
Might get hungry.
Yeah.
Beside your dinner. So, but yeah. So I highly recommend watching the Interview with the Vampire show. It is on AMC Plus.
Sweet.
If you have I think it's Comcast or Xfinity now. I think they call it Xfinity now. You can watch the episodes on demand because they're all on demand.
Oh, cool.
And then the original movie, you should watch it too. Even though I know a lot of people are like, the new show's better. The new show is better, but I still have mad love for the original movie because Tom Cruise is the stat. I was like, I didn't even realize it was Tom Cruise when I watched the movie. I was just like, oh. Afterwards, I saw his name and I was like, huh? I was attracted to Tom Cruise for like a whole hour of a movie. That's weird.
Happened to me in The Outsiders. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good-looking men in The Outsiders.
Oh,
so.
The Outsiders was.
The Outsiders was. Woo! We're not here to talk about The Outsiders. It's not a scary movie. There was just a lot of.
Only thing scary was how panicked I was throughout the whole thing.
Imagine being having a whole 6th grade class shown that, and all the girls just losing their minds when I think it was Patrick Swayze walked out in a towel.
I don't have to imagine it. It happened to me too in 6th grade.
I was gonna make sure. I was just making sure. Yeah, actually, I think it was 7th grade too for me. It was my teacher put it on. Patrick Swayze walked out in a towel, and all of us girls were like. And she was like, oh, fast forward. Nope.
My teacher was a dude. He just stood there and
he was like, it's fine. Go ahead. Look.
Yeah.
Look, all the boys were mad though. It's funny. They were all mad. I'm like, well, you don't look like that. So you're
exactly what you want me to say.
All right.
Okay, let's talk about Bit.
Gotta get so off topic.
But yes, okay, so Bit is a horror film about a transgender teenager named Laurel who moves to Los Angeles and becomes involved with a group of feminist vampires. The film explores themes of identity, power, and belonging, and features a diverse cast, including Nicole Maines, Diana Hopper, Zoe Griggs, Cher Diaz, and James Paxton. The movie was directed by Brad Michael Elmore and was released on June 22nd, 2019. The movie opens with a vampire woman turning her human boyfriend in hopes of spending an eternity together. Unfortunately, the couple is ambushed by a group of all-female vampires that the woman belongs to. Their matriarch, Duke, kills the man in front of his partner, ripping his heart out of his chest and setting it on fire with her lighter. Duke reminds the group of their biggest rule, that they are not to turn men into vampires. As punishment, the woman is sentenced to 1 year in the hole. Laurel. I always want to say Laura. I feel so bad. I also love her nickname though, Lolo.
Lolo, yeah.
Yeah. But Laurel, a young transgender girl, moves to Los Angeles after graduating from high school. In search of a fresh start after transitioning, she moves in with her estranged brother, Mark. During their first night out on the town, Laurel and Mark head out to the club. They run into Duke at the entrance, where she helps them get inside using a little bit of her vampire glamour. Hands have to be used when I say that word. But inside, Laurel meets Izzy, a young music video director and one of Duke's vampire posse members. Izzy invites Laurel to a party where Duke lures two men to feed off of. So, I guess just really quick, we should talk about, I have things written here for us to talk about, but I feel like we should backpedal a bit more even, and just like talk about that opening scene where we kind of like see Duke for the first time. We see like how stern she is on the fact that we do not turn men into vampires.
Yeah, she's very strict about it.
She is very, very strict. And we do hear in the beginning too that the woman that still is not named, but a member of their vampire squad. Other thing is they don't have a name for their squad, so like they have like we have like 100 names for them. But she's sentenced to go into the hole, like we heard before. And when Laurel enters the after party that the girls are throwing, she does see the hole for the first time, which is just this metal grate on the floor, but she's kind of drawn to it for a moment, and she hears a woman groaning from down below. So it just kind of like sets that tone, sets the significance of what's going on. And like, I don't know, I was like, ooh, dang, she in trouble.
Yeah, she's definitely in trouble for that.
Yeah. So then the next thing that we do see after they get to the party is Duke is playing pool with this guy, and she wins. And Duke kind of just like says to him like, all right, so I win, that means you have to show me, which is essentially the man needs to show himself to her. She then goes ahead and kind of just humiliates him, makes him feel low about himself.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he's still going along with this. So she goes ahead and invites him and his friend upstairs to, you know, get freaky deaky. And she lets one of the other members of the vampire posse know that everyone needs to be out of the place by 4:00. So she heads upstairs with them, and she handcuffs the guy that she had played pool against. She handcuffs him to the bed, and I guess for lack of a better term, he has some performance anxiety. So you know, things aren't working like they should. She proceeds to iconically make him feel bad about himself again.
Yeah.
Such an awkward scene to talk about, but at the same time, I'm like living for the scene when I was watching it. And then she goes ahead and she's like, fine, I'll like, you know, I'll be with your friend first. And she starts to like make out with his friend. But when she gets to his neck, she actually starts feeding off of him. And the guy thinks that they're just still making out.
Yeah, he's having a good time till she pulls away and he sees all the blood.
The blood and everything. Like, and he's like, what kind of monster is this? And then she starts to say that she knows exactly who he is and that he is not a very good person.
Yeah.
And that he has his own past. He
harmed a girl.
He harmed somebody. That's the word to use. He harmed a girl, and that, you know, basically she's here to make right for his wrong. And so he's just kind of having one of those like, oh snap kind of moments, and he like looks over at his wrist and he's like, I'm handcuffed to this bed, I can't go anywhere. Yeah. And you know, Duke does her thing.
She tells him that he has till the end of her smoking her cigarette to come to terms with the fact that his life is
about to end.
Yeah. He's done. Like, he's done. And like, she starts smoking very fast.
Yes, exactly. She doesn't even give him a lot of time.
Yeah, she starts smoking very fast.
Which I'm just like, I like Duke. I like this chick.
Yeah,
she's freaking cool.
They set up Duke very, very well.
Yeah.
They set her up to be a very big crusader, and like they set her up very well.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love her. Like, of course, she's like, you know, the leader of this group and everything, and yeah, I'm immediate crush I had on her. So back on the roof of the party, actually, Laurel and Izzy head up there to kind of like take in the sights of LA. This is Laurel's first night in LA. It's kind of crazy. She's already ditched her brother at the club and is hanging out with all of these strangers. Like, you know, just to kind of bring things into perspective here.
It's also important to note that she is like newly 18. Like, she just turned 18. She just graduated high school, and she's just visiting her brother for like supposed to be visiting him for like a couple weeks before she figures out where she wants to go next.
Yeah, what she wants to do next. You know, does she want to go to college, or does she want to just like start working, or maybe just like take a year off, or but here she is, newly 18, living the party life, just super unsafe.
Yeah. Hanging out with some vampires.
Yeah, hanging out with some vampires, and she doesn't even know it yet. So her and Izzy are just kind of like, you know, talking back and forth for a bit, just about like their dreams, aspirations, what they want to do with their life.
Yeah.
Laurel does open up and say that she, you know, she's not exactly sure what it is that she wants to do, but she knows she wants to help people. Of course, then it kind of like, you know, becomes a bit more intimate. Izzy starts flirting with Laurel a bit more, which Laurel is like completely down with that, and they do hook up. When they are done with their hookup, their makeout session, Laurel is kind of like, so like, can I see you again? And Izzy's like, this is kind of like a one night thing. Like, we're not really like, this isn't going anywhere.
Relationship, yeah.
And Laurel's like, I'm an idiot, and here I am, I'm staying on this rooftop, and I'm an idiot, and like I don't know where my brother is, I don't know where I am. Like, I'm in this whole new city by myself. And so she's just kind of like looking out over the balcony, just like wondering, what the heck am I gonna do? In that moment, Izzy just come up behind her, and she bites Laurel and starts to feed off of her. And like, she's going in, like she's having the whole Thanksgiving feast. She's not leaving any blood left in Laurel's body. No crumbs. Duke does stop her though, and says that I actually like this one, and insists that they leave her alive so then she can turn. Duke thinks that she would be a great new asset to the squad, basically. And so, you know, Duke kind of like holds Laurel up for a minute, and it's just like, you know, you'll have time to decide, is basically what she says to her. And
she's like, if you survive
it, and then just yeets her off the side of the building.
Just throws her off the roof.
And it's just like, yeah, if she survives, for sure, dude, because you just threw her off the roof of this really tall building.
Exactly.
But apparently she's got spectacular aim, because the next morning Laurel wakes up in a dumpster. Days she makes her way back to her brother's, where she sleeps for more than a day and is unable to consume regular food. Duke and her gang later visit Laurel's house, explaining their mission to empower women and punish those who deserve it. Duke urges Laurel to embrace her new identity and feed from her first victim, a vampire hunter after their group. Laurel is too frightened and can't handle the pressure to kill someone, so she reaches for the cure to reverse her vampirism. Duke kicks the cure out of her reach, and Laurel runs away. Next, the hunters attack the group, with their leader taking down Duke's allies and demanding the release of his master. That's in air quotes, by the way. Down the street, Laurel sees the man that she was supposed to feed on fleeing from the scene. Suspicious, she goes back to where the others were and intervenes, killing the lead hunter and embracing her transformation. It was a cool scene. Like, the whole fight scene was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is where like one of my first issues with this movie came in.
Yeah.
They bring in the whole familiar thing, which is like a common trope in vampire things, where it's like, another movie I think you'd really like is What You Do in the Shadows. It's a comedy vampire movie, but you would love it. It's hilarious. And there's a TV show. Also hilarious.
Okay.
But that's where I first heard about the familiar trope, where it's like they have a human that takes care of the vampire essentially, like gets the victims, gets them, and that in return the promise is that you're going to turn them. So they bring that whole like thing in. But what I didn't like about what this movie did was like the main guy was like the familiar of the master, that, you know, he mentions that, and like even Duke tells Laurel, you know, oh, the like he's a familiar. But like it seemed like the group itself was an anti-feminist vampire hunting group.
Yes.
So why would he, who's like you know, it just, I don't know, it was like maybe it's because like, you know, who the master is, but it just kind of seemed like it was like, are you attacking them because they're women vampires? Are you attacking them?
Yeah,
like, it was just kind
their
of
motivations don't make any sense, and I absolutely agree with you here, because I feel like every single time, I don't know if this is on purpose, I feel like every single time a man opens his mouth in this movie, he's automatically made to just sound like a caricature. He's made to sound so stupid.
Yeah.
Which like works with what the movie's trying to say, but at the same time, I do like criticism without it being like, you know,
too on the nose,
or creating stereotypes, or being, you know, harmful in any sort of way.
It's kind of like how I feel about like there's certain like Marvel things that have come out recently where they're trying to poke fun at the fans that are like making fun of the female-led shows, but they're leaning too much into it that it becomes a joke. It becomes like you're not making fun of those people anymore. Now you just sound like the thing that they're mad at. That's kind of what it was. Exactly what it was. So that's what it kind of was giving me the vibe of a little bit there. But other than that, the fight scene was really cool. You got a lot of lore in that little bit of like that little bit of time. The guy that she was supposed to feed on, he listens to Joe Rogan. That's all I have to say.
I knew you were going to say it. If you weren't, I was going to say it.
Like, he listens to Joe Rogan. That's all you need to know about this group of men.
Exactly. They're just like this weird group of like yee guys that lives in Los Angeles of all places.
I'm sure they're there. I'm sure there's guys like that there.
I guess. It just feels weird because like I feel like you'd want to be somewhere with like your horse and where you can go mudding, and like here you are and like, oh my god, it's so LA.
Yeah, well, they're vampire hunters, so maybe that's where it took them. They were like, well, we gotta go to LA to take out the female vampires. Because they're not only vampires, but they're also women.
And that's
two things that are not
horrible.
Okay. Two things that are not okay.
Yeah, so, you know, just like, it was kind of, in some points comical, some points, you know, you got some lore. This movie has a lot of lore that it packs into an hour and 30-minute
And some of it is handled really well, and some of it is handled kind of poorly.
Fumbles, actually.
Kind of poorly.
Which is the biggest like critique that I think we both have with this movie.
We'll talk about it at the end.
Gonna get to it at the end, but you may hear us say it a couple more times. So after the big fight and everything, Laurel and Duke hang out on the rooftop, where Laurel and Izzy had just like hooked up the night before.
A couple nights before, actually. Laurel's been asleep for like a week.
Yeah, she's, you know, goals. Anyways.
Yeah, for real. It's probably the best sleep she ever got in her entire life.
For real. Honestly, if that's the case, someone come bite my neck.
Yeah, for real.
I'd love to have a nice week of sleep. But Laurel and Duke start to, you know, just kind of like talk about, you know, everything that it means to be a vampire. Laurel needs answers after, you know, this whole thing with these vampire hunter guys. She's like, okay, like being a vampire doesn't sound like just some like me hanging out with these like, you know, cool boss babes and we all just like get to dress like alternative and like smoke cigarettes. Like there seems to be people out there who want to kill us.
Yeah, and also I have to also kill people. So.
Yeah, and so like I need answers. And so Duke has to, she opens up and gives us a bit of her backstory. And so we do learn that Duke had moved to New York City in the 70s. And she was homeless, had no money, no job, and was struggling for a long time. She did
just escorting.
Yes. She became an escort. And she was making money that way. Eventually was able to get enough money to have her own place and was able to eat, you know, like buy her own food and those kinds of things. And made like a life for herself.
Yeah, she worked her way kind of out of the bottom, and she got a regular job, and she finally got to a point where she could live her life the way she wanted to, and which is being an out lesbian in the 70s.
Exactly.
And we get kind of like the first hand of like the homophobia. She's, you know, at a bar, which seemed like it was a gay bar, so I was really shocked when this happened.
Yeah, I was really weirded
She was
out.
like making out with her girlfriend, and then this guy just comes and pours a beer on her head.
Yeah.
And it was really weird because it kind of did track like it was a gay bar. I was like, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like she found her, she even says, I found my people. So I'm like thinking she's at a gay bar, and then this guy, but I mean, I guess straight people do go to gay bars, but then it's like, why are you there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, okay, you came to be a hater, but
yeah,
essentially that's what happened here. And then isn't it like Duke goes ahead and she just like beats that guy up?
No, she goes to take out a knife to
that's what it is. She threatens him with a knife,
and then that's when Vlad, aka the Master, shows up, and he's goofy looking.
Thank you, because like at this moment, this is like when like the
big, he's supposed to be like the Dracula.
Chorus is singing.
Yeah,
and
he's supposed to be like the Dracula of this universe. So he's like the father, I guess, of all vampires.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, he's like hedonistic. All he does is want to party. He's got a million wives and stuff like that. The brides, you know. And he's supposed to be like, obviously, like, he's so enticing, but I just felt like he was like dopey looking.
No, he looked like a thumb. They were trying to introduce this man like he was Vladdy Daddy. And he was not Vladdy Daddy.
He was not even close to it.
He was...
but Duke does mention that she was immediately enticed by this guy, and she was shocked because she is a big effing dyke.
Yes. Her words.
Her words. That's exactly what she said. That's why I'm quoting it like that. And he makes her one of his brides and puts her under this spell where she's basically just like a go-go dancer behind him. Like there's this whole dance montage where she's just there's just a bunch of women dancing behind this man as he's just standing there like, yeah, look how great I am.
Yeah, he's just kind of like there. It kind of was giving like the room they were in was giving Hotline Bling to me a little bit. You know, they were on the disco dance floor. I know what it really was, but you know, he's just in the middle and then everyone else is like his backup dancer. I'm like, interesting. So you got all these wives not to dance with you.
Just to dance around you.
I
mean, you know what? If that's all he's doing, that's fine.
Their decoration.
You know, I mean, like, yeah, their decoration, but it's like, that's all if the worst he's doing is just like having them dance around him, like, you know what?
Feels strange. Like, if that's what he's gonna do, just hold auditions, you know?
Yes, exactly. And, you know, then we find out how Duke, breaks free of Vlad and how they came to the rule that no man should be a vampire.
Yes, because this whole time he's using a glamour on her.
He's using a glamour on her, and he's got her under a spell. So her and the first bride, the original bride of like all of his wives, take him down by like setting him on fire and like killing and trying to kill him, but they couldn't burn his heart. His heart will burn.
Yeah.
Which is the only way you can kill a vampire is by burning them and burning their heart. So they decide they're going to take the heart, they're going to lock him away, and Duke mentions that every so often she goes and takes a piece of his heart and eats it to get the power.
Some of his power.
And then she tells Laurel specifically, men can't, she says, men can't handle the power of being a vampire. They have all the power now, and look at what they do with it. You know, so she's essentially saying men have power in, like, you know, government, in just the world in general, world over, and look at how they handle that power versus, and then imagine giving them the power to be a vampire on top of that. Like, what kind of man would they be? You know, and it's implied. I mean, Vlad really wasn't doing anything other than just he
literally just wanted to dance.
He got really, really stoned and danced. That's like all he was doing. Like, he wasn't going around just like executing people randomly. Like, I mean, there is the part where they're all covered in blood in the bed, but like,
that was a little sus.
You know, I'm sure that that was food for them, you know, like, but it's not like he's going around like starting vampire wars or something like that, you know, he's just partying. He's like, I just don't want to think about anything. I just want to dance.
Yeah, I just want to dance.
Like, that was him the whole time. But still, I understand Duke's position, and I would have probably felt the same type of anger.
He took away her autonomy for years and years.
I mean, decades.
Yeah, and
no autonomy.
She had fought so hard to be her own person, and that was just taken in moments of looking at this human thumb from Spy Kids.
Thumb, running in, thumb.
So after revealing her entire backstory to Laurel,
trauma dumping on her.
Yeah, basically, just one big trauma dump. Laurel's like, okay.
I just met you like a week ago, but I now know your whole entire life story.
Right. And then Duke's kind of like, well, let me show you one more thing. And Laurel's like, I don't know how much more I can take right now. Like, I need to go process this. And she's like, no, you'll like this. Everyone always likes this. And so she grabs Laurel's hand and they start to levitate. And, it's kind of funny because she does do just think of a happy thought, which I immediately thought of Peter Pan.
That was the point of it,
yeah. And, they kind of are just like floating over LA for a moment and having this like fun little moment with each other. And Laurel kind of like stops herself like in all of this like giddy euphoria. And she's like, I have actually one more question for you. And Duke's like, yeah, go ahead. And Laurel says, so what happened with the first bride? And it is then revealed that the first bride lied. The first bride is the woman that we saw at the beginning of the movie where she was trying to turn a man into a vampire. So she is the woman that is currently in the hole.
Yep.
Yikes. So after that, they go ahead, float their way back down onto the roof, and Laurel spends the night at Izzy's. They talk about living forever, never aging, vampire stuff. Laurel does express her fears of having to kill people that she feeds from. The next morning, she heads back to her brother's and talks to her mom, who is understandably worried about her daughter disappearing into the night and no one being able to get in contact with her for hours. I mean, the way they kind of tried to frame this in the movie was like the mom was being overbearing, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's another thing I have an issue with.
It's like another gripe.
Just Laurel's entire handling of the situation. Like, I understand you can't just be like, "Hey, mom, I'm a vampire."
Yeah.
But I thought that it was just written so poorly. Like there were just points in time where like she would like when she was talking to her mom, where like I'm like you could formulate a little bit of a better like half truth. Like mom is worried about you. You could just be like, I really haven't been sleeping because I've been busy like hanging out with my friends. Yeah, like that's all you had to say. Like, to that extent. But she's just like, I'm just tired.
Yeah, and it's just like the mom is freaking out. You can tell she's freaking out, and I'm just like...
And when you learn later on in the movie, like more about Laurel's history, a little bit more about Laurel's history. Yeah. More gripes later on. We'll talk about. But when you learn more like about her mental health and her mental state, like you understand why the mom is like concerned about talking to her daughter on the phone and hearing her daughter sound like. Yeah.
Like she's not all the way there.
Yeah. And... So she's like, obviously she's concerned. So I would have just been like, yeah, you know what? I'm having a great time, mom. I met these girls. I've been hanging out with them and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm just like, I'm going all the time. Like, I'm sorry. Because all she had to say, and technically it's not a lie.
It's not a lie.
You're just not telling her that you're also a vampire.
It's just like the fact that she just kind of blows off her family, her friends, everyone who's like been there for her in her corner. Yeah.
Because she also has a best friend that she was friends with in high school named Andy, who was already worried about her going to LA because he was already thinking like when she gets there, they're not going to speak to each other anymore and they're not going to be friends anymore, which is understandable,
Yeah,
like,
that happens. It's a real fear after high school.
And then like when he's trying to contact her, like in the like while she's in LA, she's just like blowing him off and not talking to him and not saying anything. And it's like, he says he's going to come and visit her and she tells him no. And it's like, he's like, I already bought my ticket. I'm going to fly down this weekend. And she's like, no.
Yeah. And that's the call right after she speaks to her mom. Her brother comes in with the FaceTime call and like surprises her. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She's just like, no, you shouldn't come down. And he's like, why? And she can't even give him like a reason. So like, it feels even more like she's blowing him off. And that really sucks. And it's an unfortunate situation altogether. And so they do have an argument over the phone and it's cut short when the call freezes. And that's the other thing is she doesn't even call him back. She don't even try. Like, it's painful. But meanwhile, the rest of the V Squad takes down the remaining vampire hunters in their lair, I guess. It honestly just looks like an abandoned warehouse, but you know, that it's their little vampire hunter lair. Things are going well for all of the girls after that. Oh, I want to stop really quick before I like continue on with what I have written here. They took those guys out so easily.
They that scene was so short. It was like
so short.
They were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get these girls," and blah blah blah. And then the next scene is just the building's burning.
Yeah, they just throw one grenade in there, and they're like, "Wow!" And it's like for a bunch of like yee dudes, you think that you like prepare for a grenade?
Yeah, they were not prepared for it apparently. Like, and even the one girl was like, "They always think we don't have any weapons."
I mean, it's so stupid.
It is really stupid.
Like, it was so easy. They didn't have to even go in the building. They didn't have to go near the building.
Exactly. Oh my god.
I had to point that out really quick because it just was like, I don't know, it was a weird one for me. But yeah, so after taking down the rest of the vampire hunting team, things are going well for all of the girls. We do get a fun montage where all the members are hunting down their victims. They're all men that would absolutely give you the ick. So it's a very satisfying little montage. You know, it's a real like you go girl kind of moment.
Yeah, it's the good for her moment.
Yeah, it's the good for her moment in the movie. And like, you know, I had fun watching it. It was cool to see them all like doing their own thing. It is important to note that while Laurel is having fun with her new life, she is actively avoiding contact with her friends and family, which we do mention, but she's also has not fed on anyone and is growing more hungry every passing moment while this is going on. So she's watching like her and Izzy go to like an art gallery, and then like afterwards Izzy just goes ahead and just like feasts upon this man that was so cringy while he's like trying to explain that he is a feminist, but not a feminist. And like, you can clearly tell he put his foot in his mouth and he was trying not to get canceled. Yeah. So he got 8.
Yeah, literally. Literally.
But like, despite all of that happening, like Laurel's witnessing these things happening, but she's still choosing not to eat. So she's starving at this point. Yeah. And it gets to a point where she's walking home, back to her brother's, and, she passes by this girl who's violently vomiting in the road. Yeah. Unnecessarily, I feel. Very unnecessary. We didn't need that. But you know,
it was to show how drunk she was.
I guess, you know, there's other ways, but yeah. Stumbling. Yeah. Just try stumbling.
Like they did in the first Terrifier movie, like they didn't show either of those girls getting sick. No. They just walked around and tripped over themselves, and that was enough to know, okay, they're very drunk.
Wow, they're drunk. Okay, cool. But yeah, so Laurel does stop. She's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And of course the girl's like, I'm gonna be fine. I'm just waiting for my Uber. You know, kind of seems like a girl looking out for girl kind of moment, you know, kind of nice. But since Laurel is so hungry, she starts to get kind of hypnotized every time the girl, like, you know, moves her neck, and she can just see like her exposed neck there. And finally Laurel can't hold herself back anymore, and she lunges forward and starts to feast off of this girl. She then retracts immediately and like realizes what she's doing, and that this does mean she would have to kill the girl. And the girl is understandably terrified. Yeah. It's a sobering moment for her. I'm sure she took out most of the blood alcohol, you know, the alcohol in her blood. Yeah, her blood alcohol content went way back down. And so girl starts booking it down the road, and Laurel's like, "Wait, no," kind of like, "I have to kill you." Yeah. But Duke just like comes out of the freaking sky, and she ends that girl's life. And then Laurel's first thought is, "You've been following me?" And Duke's like, "Yeah, and you can clearly see why. You're an idiot."
Yeah, exactly. And blow our whole cover in like one week.
She's like, "Listen, like, it's one thing if you blow your cover, but you're also putting the rest of us, you know, it's a threat to the rest of us as well."
Threat to the group.
To the group. And the thing is Laurel's the leader of this group, and she's going to look out for all of her girls. Yeah. Not Laurel, sorry, Duke. Duke. Yeah. Duke's the leader. She's going to look out for all of the girls, not just Laurel. And Laurel needs to get with the program that you're a vampire now. You need to feast off of people. That way you don't get to this point where you're making dumb decisions like this.
Exactly.
And she even says that almost specifically to her.
Mm-hmm.
So Laurel goes ahead, makes her way back to her brother's, and her brother is like there. He's shaken. Laurel comes in, and her brother has to let her know that her friend Andy, the one that she did just have an argument with over the phone, did try to take his own life. He is okay, but you know he is like not doing too well. Yeah, his liver. Yeah, he's not doing very well. So you know, Laurel's kind of having this moment of, wow, I really need to be there for the ones that I love. And then Mark, her brother, just suddenly like he just goes off. Like Mark gets mad because he's kind of this is what we start to learn. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I understand why he got mad.
I understand
because he's kind of being the one to take up the brunt of everything with Laurel. So whenever his parents call, how's Laurel? Whenever like all her friends are calling him to find out what's going on with her and where she's at. And you find out that like in the past, Laurel had some mental health issues where she was harming herself.
Yes.
And attempted at her own life as well. And Mark had kind of gotten pushed to the side because everyone was dealing with her stuff. So Mark feels, you know, like no one cares about him. No, his parents don't care about him. And now Laurel's running around LA doing God knows what. And Mark is like, I'm having to take the brunt of all of this when I just want to be my own person. I just want to live my own life. I don't want to have to deal with you. Like, I literally don't want to have to deal with you. Like,
and he even says, he's like, do you even know why I moved here? And she's like, well, to become an actor. And he's like, yeah, and you haven't asked about how that's going, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I moved here to get away from you.
Yeah.
And it's just this big moment where she's realizing, like, I guess the effects of her actions.
Yeah.
You know, her brother's finally having this moment where he's getting to say his side, and so that's why it's coming up in this big explosive mess.
Yeah. It's like you're holding it in for so long, and then it's finally like something pushes it over the edge, which was Andy hurting himself. You know, that pushed it over the edge for him, because I mean, I can only imagine him having to get a call like that and then having to be like, I don't know when Laurel's coming home to tell her that her best friend is like nearly dead in the hospital.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the things that she has been doing to her friends and family have been very selfish. And it's like, you know, putting the whole, like, she's a vampire thing to the side for a minute. Like, you know, she wasn't ever handling anything well. It's like what you said earlier. Just, like, you don't have to give them the whole truth, but just reassure them that you're okay. Yeah. You're not really paying attention to the fact that these people care about you.
Exactly.
You just kind of was like, you moved here and you're like, great, I'm gonna hang out with these strangers now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it feels weird. But while Mark is, you know, kind of putting everything out on the table for Laurel to hear, she just finally gets hit with so much rage, and she's still so hungry that she bites him. And this is, you know, the big moment of like, she's gonna have to kill her brother.
Yeah.
Because he's a man.
He's a man. You can't let him turn.
Can't let him turn. So she's like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? She picks him up, gets him in the car, and for whatever reason, she thinks, let me bring him to Duke so she can help me figure out how to get out of the situation. Because that's what happens when the only people that you have left around you are strangers.
Exactly.
So, Duke gives Laurel an ultimatum. Either Laurel kills Mark, or she will. When Laurel is cornered, she creates a diversion by releasing Vlad's bride from the hole, who then releases Vlad himself. Vlad takes charge of the girls and exposes Duke's use of his power to hold on, I'm going to get this word. It's always hard. Coerce them into committing more ruthless acts. Vlad expresses his displeasure towards Duke for being ungrateful and plans to regain his power after killing her. However, Laurel stands up to Vlad and sets him on fire. She then rallies the girls to join forces and obliterate Vlad's body. Duke attempts to seize Vlad's heart, but Laurel intervenes and takes possession of it. Duke's actions cause the other girls to view her as hypocritical. prompting them to side with Laurel and imprisoning Duke temporarily. I understand I'm throwing a lot at you guys right now, okay? With Laurel in charge of the V Squad, she invites Mark to join the vampire community and apologizes for her past toxic behavior and neglect. Rather than hoarding power like Duke, Laurel chooses to share it fairly and leads the vampires in feeding on Vlad's heart, ushering in a new era of balanced leadership. So, yes, you heard all of that right. And as fast as I just read through all of that for you, is as fast as that happens in the movie. It is like as if they took so long to do all this like kind of lore building throughout the movie that then they were like, oh crap, we only have the budget for like another 20 minutes of film. So we're gonna have to just like throw all this in here and be like, cool, that's the end.
Yeah. And it does end with a cutesy quip of her saying, like, that's my story. Don't worry, I'm not going to get, like, hopefully there'll be a sequel. Don't worry, I don't plan on getting pregnant in it. And if you know Twilight, that's the point of the quip.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it there, which is kind of funny, but it's like, you can't even take the moment to, like, appreciate it and laugh because you just had so much thrown at you at the end of this movie. And it was like, they just don't even care.
Yeah.
You know, like, nothing makes sense. I'm sorry, but none of that made sense. Mm-hmm. Justice for Duke.
Yeah.
Duke deserved better.
So this movie, I have a huge problem with the way it handles what it's trying to do. So first of all, I understand the message is like that, you know, women should have the power. They should be able to be safe. They should be able to do whatever they want to do and have fun. Yeah. Like Duke even says at one point, let the men be afraid to walk or jog alone at night, you know, because the women are vampires and they're flying around and they're eating everybody.
Yeah.
But my problem with this movie is that, like, that's not what feminism is.
No.
That's not what feminism
not
is.
At all.
Feminism is about taking down patriarchal systems that harm both women and men. Mm-hmm. And at the end of this movie, I did not like the fact that they made Duke suddenly this antagonistic character.
Yes.
What I thought what they should have done was have her give Mark a chance. What they should have done was they should have had Mark help save Duke's life.
Exactly.
They should have had Mark help save Duke's life to get her to sort of say, not necessarily just go, okay, you're in the squad, like we're all like men are vampires now, but like have her like, you know, have her go, you know what, maybe we'll leave him and just we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
And then maybe have Laurel say like, and if he steps out of line, I'll kill him myself.
Yeah.
You know? Like if he steps out of line. Because
like
Mark
that.
even says like, what if I turn like those other guys? Like what if but Mark, I'll say this about Mark. Mark does not seem like a bad guy.
No.
He tries to hit on a girl in the bar and he falls flat on it and on his face and she walks away and he's just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, and he does not pursue it any further.
Every time they show you Mark, he's always being a good brother to Laurel.
Yeah.
He's hanging out with his friends. He's just having a good time. Yeah. He's doing his own thing. They never show him being creepy towards women. They never show him. So to me, it's like, this is a good character you could have used to show Duke that, I hate to say it, hashtag not all men, you know, I hate to say it because I hate that phrase, but it's a good way to show Duke, hey, it's not men that are the problem, it's the systems that men benefit from that also hurt men that are the problem.
Exactly.
That's the problem. And they didn't utilize that. What they did was they just turned Duke into this like rad femme. Yeah. Who's like, he's gonna turn cruel. So then Laurel's like, okay, go in the hole. Yeah. And I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense to have that happen at the end rather than letting Duke become, because again, you have a woman who was deeply traumatized. You can understand why she hates men. Yes. When you watch her story, you can understand why she doesn't like men. From the very beginning, she's had to be an escort to get by. So that means she's probably got used and abused by men, you know,
for a long time. And the thing is, if I may interject for just a second, this would have done wonders for her character arc. I think this is where you're going with it. Yeah. This would have done wonders for her character arc, where it's this woman who has been abused for so long by men, was basically hypnotized and mind controlled by one for decades into just being his wife. Yeah. Pretty much.
Dancing around him.
Yeah, just being his backup dancer. I didn't want to take away from the moment, but it's true. I'm happy you said it. But like, for her to have been through all of that, it makes sense for why her character is so anti-man. Mm-hmm. And it would have been so great for her to have this moment where here's this man who helps them take down Vlad, who is bad. I don't know what they were trying to do. Like, it was like some little tiny redemption arc for Vlad for 2 seconds.
He was gaslighting the women.
Yeah.
He was gaslighting
and they
them.
all ate it up.
And
like, as if they were being mind controlled in that moment. Like, for me, I don't know. I just feel like Vlad's the one telling you that Duke's been mind controlling you. I don't know if I'm going to believe Vlad.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to trust Vlad on that, you know.
Like, I'm just going to be honest, it just feels like gaslighting.
Yeah, it's basically what it was. It was gaslighting.
It was gaslighting. And it would have been so much better for her character to have that kind of arc and that kind of ending versus for us to have this really amazing character. I do feel like Duke is well written.
No, she's a very well written character.
I love her. She has so much substance to her. And for her to just be thrown away and like killed by the people that she cared for the most in the end feels so poor. It's such poor writing and it just falls flat.
Sorry, my cat is screaming in the background.
You're okay. She's mad too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's like a big problem for me with the movie. And also, until you said it in the beginning of the script, I didn't realize that Laurel was transgender.
I'm so happy you're bringing it up.
They did not make that explicit. Nope. And I know some people might be like, that's okay because they don't have to make it explicit. No, I felt like that would have been nice to understand because technically she already went through a transformation in her life. And it would have been nice to see that juxtaposed to the transition from human to vampire. So I just kind of feel like that was never explicitly stated. It was just sort of like something that I didn't even know was a thing until you said it at the beginning of the script. I was like, oh, she's trans. Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't know until I was looking up anything about the movie. I watched the whole movie. Then I started to look things up and I'm like, that's what we're, that was like a part of this movie that I didn't even pick up on or anything. Which is fine. But when you want to add elements to the story that you would have to know that Laurel is trans to understand this whole part where Mark is like putting his whole like heart out on the table would have had so much more weight to it if we knew that that's why Laurel was hurting. Yeah. And that's why, you know, Mark was put to the side because Laurel was going through this transition and was trying to accept herself and be accepted by others. And that's why she, you know, was hurting herself and was just going through such a hard time in her, like, you know, what's the word, formative years. Yeah. And why Mark needed to distance himself. Exactly. It would have given so much more context for just that one scene, not even bringing up other scenes. And it's just something that they just failed to address from the get-go, and I don't know how they ever thought any of us were supposed to just know that. Exactly. I'm not going to sit here and make assumptions. Yeah. I'm not gonna make assumptions on that. No. You know, there's no way that you could have known that. Like I said, until you said it, I didn't even know. And I'm like, what the heck? Okay. Yeah. Like that's a different layer on top of the movie. Yeah, all in all, that's like the biggest issues I had. Like it handled its lore really well in the beginning and then just fumbled the bag as it like got further and further down the line. You know, I know it's a low budget movie, it's an indie film. You know, you can tell that in everything, like the way that it's shot, the acting, like for the most part, I think Duke was like the best actor in the entire movie. Everybody else kind of was flat and wooden. I will, you know, give some flowers to Nicole Maines as well, who played Laurel. She's a great actress. She actually does a lot of shows on the CW, Supergirl, The Flash, and everything. Okay. And she is a trans actress. Yes, she is. Yes. So I guess if I knew those shows and I knew her face, I probably would have figured out she was trans from that. I've never watched any of those shows, so. And the thing is, I never reached a point in those shows where her character was introduced. This is from me just looking things up for the sake of this podcast. But I do want to just give her that because her position in just, you know, what's the word? Not this role specifically, but just for like her position being in like a leading role. Yeah. And, you know, being on like, you know, prime time on the CW and stuff, like, just kudos to her. And, you know, she's paving the way. And since we are doing this is like our Pride Month thing. I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and like I said, I've never seen the show, so I didn't realize. I know the name. Like when I saw the name, I was like, oh, okay. But you know, because I've heard the name, because I remember when they cast her on those shows, they made a big deal about it. They're like, yeah, first trans like superhero, not first trans superhero, but first trans like character on the superhero show, and they made like a big deal about that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember the name, but I never watched the show, so I did not know her face.
Right.
So, but you know, I mean, that's cool. Kudos to them for making sure that they did cast a trans woman as a trans woman.
Exactly. It's important. It's important. Even if we didn't know that she was trans throughout the whole movie because it
wasn't explained.
But apparently it is important to her character that we do know it.
Yeah, no. So yeah, that is Bit.
That is Bit. What is your skull rating for Bit? Yeah,
this movie had so much potential, and I love the beginning. I love the premise. I love anything where you put women on that pedestal and you give them the power and you give them roles that men would normally have. It was very Lost Boys in the beginning. Which is another movie. I just remembered it as we were talking about this movie. The Lost Boys is another movie I absolutely love. It was very Lost Boys with the whole like, you know, this is your life now, you're one of us, like blah blah blah, like, you know, sort of thing. It was very Lost Boys. But I feel like it fell flat in its message. I feel like once it got to the last act, it just sort of fell apart. And it couldn't redeem itself. Like the ending wasn't empowering to me. It was just disappointing. I'm like, you took one of the most traumatized characters in the movie and threw her in the hole.
Yeah.
Like that's just a slap in the face to women who have been through that type of trauma.
Thank you.
And they have those types of feelings towards men and maybe could have their mind changed if they're around the right type of guys. And you just made her into like a rad femme, a misandrist who hates men. And it's like, you sort of give that like, you sort of, again, we talk about turning into a caricature of what you're making fun of, you know, like you become what, you know, so it's like all the things that these red pill guys, say about feminists, you made it true in that moment with this character who was seen as a character of strength. And that made me very mad because I'm like, this is a character that's supposed to be strong. We're supposed to look to her as strength. And yes, she's deeply flawed. And I don't agree with the no men should have this power thing.
Correct.
But at the same time, you had an opportunity to show growth in her character. And what you did instead was say, she's exactly what the red pills are talking about. And Laurel is the opposite, is the one that's going to unify everybody. And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense because that's the other thing is they didn't build Laurel up enough to make her a likable, like, heroine.
Up until this moment, Laurel is just kind of like, to me, she's this person that, you know, can't juggle having these two lives at the same time. She's, you know, let her, you know, what's the word? I don't want to say let her family down because that's not essentially what it was, but
she's just letting everything fall by the wayside.
And you want her to be the leader now?
Yeah.
How can she lead a group of people when she couldn't even lead herself?
She's not very, I don't know, she's not a very, like, likable character in that sense.
No.
And it just didn't make any sense to me for her to be the one that's lifted up and pushed down, like pushed to this role. When she had no substance compared to Duke. Duke had all this substance and Laurel had none. So I feel like it's like you're a main character, you gave her nothing, and then you gave this other character everything. And at the end of the movie, we're supposed to hate her because she doesn't want to let her brother live. And I'm like, I don't even care about her brother. Let her brother die at this point.
He's not in the movie that much.
He's not in the movie that much. I mean, like, I had nothing against Mark.
No.
But like, I don't care. Like, you could have let him die and let her stay, you know. So for that, I have to give the movie a two skulls out of 5.
That's totally fair.
It knocked it down because I had it up higher. I had it up at like about like a 3.5 to a 4.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was like, it's a really enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
I love the aesthetic. I love everything about it. It reminds me of like the movies I used to watch back when I was really deeply more involved within the community, and I would watch a lot of those like the Itty Bitty Titty Committee and like But I'm a Cheerleader, all of those movies, like the lesbian movies, that's what it reminded me of. Or Bound is another fantastic lesbian horror movie. Or not horror movie, it's like a crime thriller. It reminded me of that, and then it got to that last part, and I'm like, y'all just threw the whole thing right out the window.
All this
and
great stuff you were building.
You just made it, like, you know, and again, you could have made your message that men and women should have that equity and should be able to work together and move together in a world where we're not allowing the patriarchy to hurt both of us, you know, to put men down for not being one thing and to put women down for not being another, you know, like but what you did was you were just like, she's a rad femme, and now we're gonna go. This is a girl boss, even though this girl was like had no substance the entire movie.
None.
Like none.
And like the point where she's lifted up to the role of being the leader of this group now is when she's made her dumbest mistakes. You know, like how do you expect this chick to lead everyone else on how to be a vampire when she's over here refusing to feed and out of starvation bit her brother and breaking the core rule here of you know, we can't turn the like I just I don't know. It all felt weird. Even just like that final scene with her and her brother talking, it just felt so rushed. It just feels like they were trying to take time to build this whole like lore and story throughout the movie, and then they needed to like. It feels like the studio came in. It feels like the studio came in and told them, "Hey, we don't have any more money for you, so you better wrap this up." Yeah, like just wrap it up, and they're like, okay," and just like wrote something that they could have on the back of a napkin. Yeah, on the back of a napkin that they threw away, and then they had to go back to the Denny's and like get it out of the trash can. And then they were like, okay, here it is. We can fit this in 20 minutes. Exactly. So what would your rating be? My rating for the movie, I'm going to say 1.5. 1.5. I'm rating this pretty low just because it's such a slap in the face. It had so much potential, exactly like you said. And for that potential to be wasted it makes it an even worse movie to me. If it was just bad from beginning to end, then I would be like, all right, I'll give you like a 2.5. But for the fact that you showed that you were able to make something good, and then you just threw it away at the end of your movie and still put that out, that's a slap in the face as a viewer. It is. And I agree with that. And like I said, I was really into this film when it started. I loved it. It was really good. And then just fell apart at the end, you know. And like I said, in Laurel, it was giving Lost Boys, because that's how I feel about Michael in the Lost Boys. I'm like, he's like nothing and nobody, and then he just takes out this entire group of cool vampires because he fell in love with the girl, and he's like, she's not bad. I'm like, you can't kill David. Like, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You're not allowed. That is like, a vampire movie I've seen. Yeah, you're like you're dumb, Michael. You're not cool. There's nothing cool about you. You're just like, I'm a vampire now because I thought this girl was hot. Like, no, like you're not a likable main character. Get out. Like leave the vampires are cool. And like similar vibes. Yeah, it's very similar Lost Boys vibes. Like, the be one of us. Like, come join us. You know, like sort of thing. Like, it does give that same vibe. It's just the feminist angle, you know, where it's like, you know, there's no other male vampires, you know, there's no male vampires, it's just the females, you know. Not only that, but like one more thing to note about the movie before we like are totally done talking about it. I would have really loved to know when Duke picked up all the other girls that are in the group. I would have loved to know what era are they from? You know, what's their story? How did they fall into this, even if it is just something stupid where, you know, because I think they said that the one girl, Frog, she just wanted to be a part of it because she knew she'd be beautiful and young forever. Like, that's fine. Mood. Yeah. Mood. Also, one more thing for the movie ending. The one girl, I love the fact that she had a cat that she loved more than anything in her life, because they were talking about all when Laurel was asking about, like, I have a family, which was stupid, because she asks about, I have a family, what do I do about my family, and then doesn't do anything about her family. Like, and that's after Duke tells her, oh, Izzy goes and visits her family all the time. Like, she goes and like does things with her brother and all this stuff, and she's like, Frog works out of her dad's tattoo shop, and then like she points to the other girl and she's like, Mr. Kitty. Yeah, she has a cat. She has a cat that she loves, and she's like, Mr. Kitty. Yeah, and it's like, you know what? If that's your family, that's your family. So she's got the cat that she loves, you know. And then after she killed the one bad cop, she spray paints Mr. Kitty on the wall. I was like, I love that. That was dope. Cute. I was like, that's adorable. So I was like, yay, Mr. Kitty. She became my favorite in the group automatically for that one. She was great for that. So, but yes, yeah. So, anyways, that was Bit. You know, I'm sad to give it such a low rating. I was so excited to watch this movie, but you know, that's the way it is sometimes, you know? They can't always be good ones. Yeah, exactly. All right. So yeah, that was Bit. We talked about Bit. Yeah. That's good stuff. That was it. That's it for Bit. That's it for Bit. Yeah. All right. So this week we have our fun topic. We're going to get into that. Oh yeah. So you want to kick it off? Me? Yeah, we kicked off last. Okay, well, yeah, the fun topic for this week is our top 3 favorite creepypastas. Yeah, we
explain what creepypastas are a little bit.
Yeah, creepypastas are like these like weird little stories that exist online. They usually have more of a dark theme to them, a bit of a horror element to them.
Yes. Hence the name creepypasta.
Exactly.
You guys have probably heard of some creepypastas. Slender Man. Yeah. We won't talk about that one for obvious reasons because it's upsetting. But
yeah.
Very upsetting. But yeah, Slender Man was one of the earliest creepypastas that people remember.
Yeah, a lot of people know Jeff the Killer as well.
Jeff the Killer. Hate him.
That's a prominent creepypasta.
Hate him. He's ugly.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Body shaming.
No, not body shaming. Face shaming.
Face shaming.
His face is nightmarish. If you want to know what he looks like, go Google him. His face is nightmarish. But yeah, creepypastas are something that in the 2010s were like really, really prevalent on the internet. They were shared in places like Tumblr. They were shared on YouTube. A lot of YouTubers actually, in fact, somebody who people might know from playing Among Us, Corpse Husband, he started out being creepypasta narrator. He started out being creepypasta narrator. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's actually how I first heard of him. And then like I forgot he existed. And then 2020 rolled around and he started playing Among Us and everyone was down bad for him because of his deep voice. And I was like, that guy used to narrate scary videos. That guy used to narrate scary videos. This is what he's doing now. He's making everybody he made AOC flustered. She was like, ooh, this voice is so deep. I'm like, girl, calm down. You are a senator. You cannot be acting like this. Chill. Like, I mean, his voice is deep.
But senators get excited.
But yeah.
I also want to say I think they were shared on at least I think I read it on the Creepypasta website at the time as well. I know you were saying like Tumblr and everything, so I just want to make sure.
Yes, they have them on Creepypasta. They have a Creepypasta website.
Yeah.
I just know that a lot of the times it was other places people saw the creepypastas. It was hardly ever on the actual site. It was usually like YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter, things like that.
So you're saying I'm different and quirky. That's cool.
You're unique. I didn't even know there was a creepypasta website. Yeah. No, I know now, but I'm saying like when I first started hearing about creepypastas, I didn't know there was a creepypasta website until like then, you know.
Yeah.
So then I started. I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's where they're all. All right. So I guess I'll kick it off. So we only picked 3 each, and we're not going to read them to you because a lot, especially this one that I'm going to start with, is very, very long. But we're going to give you a synopsis of these, and then we'll leave links in the description if you've never read these before, if you want to go read them. They're really cool. But my one that I picked, and I love this one, is one of my favorites, and it scared the crap out of me when I read it, is No End House. It's called No End House. So this is the story of a guy who finds out from a friend of his that there is a haunted house that will give you $500 if you make it through all the way to the ending. The only caveat is that it is one of the scariest haunted houses you have ever walked through, and it will mess you up. And I'm not going to give away the ending because the ending of this story is incredible. And I literally like dropped my phone when I read it. I was like, oh, but the rooms, he goes into the house, like this guy's like, I'm a tough guy, I can do whatever I want, like I'm not scared of this. And he goes in the house and it just progressively gets worse and worse. It starts out being like that game Spooky's House of Jump Scares where it's like cheesy things popping out at him, and then it just gets twisted, psychological, messes with his head, and the ending just throws you for a loop. I don't want to give it away, but it just good. Throws you for a loop. Like
it's a good read.
It's so good, and it has like the ending is like one of my favorite tropes in horror. Like I just love it. So 1408. I'll say that. That's all I'm going to say. 1408. If you've seen that movie, you can kind of guess where the ending is going. But yeah, so that is one of my favorite creepypastas. Is No End House.
Ooh. I guess we'll make it over to me now.
Yes.
My first one that I have here to talk about is Candle Cove.
Candle Cove. That's the first one I ever read.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the first one I ever read.
The first one, well, actually, the first one I ever read is the next one I'll talk about. But, Candle Cove is kind of like, it's actually a lot like,
Welcome Home.
Welcome Home. Thank you. I just wanted to say, Molly. Molly, darling. But no, it's a lot like Welcome Home, and I can only assume that Welcome Home got a lot of inspiration from the Candle Cove creepypasta originally. But this is supposed to be like a popular children's TV show that, is like a little puppet show thing that ran for a certain amount of years or something. but people have all like forgotten that it existed, and now people are starting to like sort of remember that this was around. And what was cool about this creepypasta is it tricked the internet. It kind of gaslit the internet into thinking that this was a real show at one time.
I thought it was.
Yeah. And
I was looking for it. I was like obsessed. I was trying to find it for the longest time.
My brother and I, we would get so into it. They even like started uploading like the episodes and everything. And in the episodes, you would start to see like these like creepy things happening, you know, like the static happens and suddenly you see like this weird like bear face guy, but he doesn't look cute. He looks like demented. But it's really cool. And it gets to like a point where like, you know, the puppets are screaming. I think not the puppets are screaming. It's a little girl just screaming, and it's just a camera on her face for like a long time or something. And so it was fooling a lot of people on the internet to remember that this happened when this never happened.
Yeah.
I can't remember when they like claimed Candle Cove was on air. I think it may be
in the 70s. It was in the 70s.
So yeah, just like
and it was only like in a small
specific
region,
area. It's like a PBS thing, you know, so local children's shows. Which also kind of reminds me of Amanda the Adventurer, and I also felt like Amanda the Adventurer got a lot of
kids,
inspiration.
A lot of the kids media stuff that comes out nowadays gets inspiration from, I'm pretty sure, Candle Cove.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, essentially that's it. I do think, you know, give it a read on the Creepypasta website. Check out the episodes and everything. It's worth the time. You actually can watch this on Amazon Prime as well, which I didn't realize.
Yeah. And it's Channel Zero, which is a Creepypasta TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you can go ahead and you can check those out on there and, you know, just see what's up.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
All right. So my second one that I picked is called The Expressionless. The reason I picked this one actually is because of the image that you see, the image that accompanies this. It's an image of a woman. There's an image of a woman in a hospital bed, and there's two nurses like holding on to the woman, like holding her down. But the woman's face looks like a pale mask with no expression, kind of like Michael Myers, but more of like a mannequin, almost like veering into a mannequin. This story is about it's a very short story, very short, like quick read. A woman wanders into a hospital, and she has a cat in her mouth, which they're like shocked by. And when she drops the cat from her mouth, they realize she has these extremely sharp teeth. They take her back into the room and to try to operate on her and figure out what the heck is going on, because she's like convulsing and all this stuff. And it just, chaos ensues from there. It's a very short, quick story, but the chaos that comes from this is like intense. And nowadays reading it, because there's so many creepypastas, and it's funny because like I was actually reading the comments on the Creepypasta website on this story with people going, yeah, the ending is kind of like lame. And I'm like, you know what's funny is when this story came out, this ending was like a bombshell, like the way like it was handled and like the horror. But so many other creepypastas have now taken inspiration from The Expressionless, that they use the same kind of, because I was like, I think that Mickey Mouse one that they did. I think it was, oh my god, the one with the tunnels, like they used almost the same exact thing at the end. The like Mickey Mouse saying something creepy, and like I'm like, yeah, because they all took inspiration from The Expressionless. The Expressionless was the first one to do it, and then everyone started doing it, and then years later people are finding The Expressionless because it's been so buried. Now they're like, oh, that's like stupid. I've read like 8,000 stories like that, and I'm like, yeah, well, this was the original. This was one of the first ones I ever read that was like this, and nobody was doing this back then. And this one was, it was great. It was great. It's a good story. It's very short, so if you want to read The Expressionless,
check it out. Yeah, check it out. My second one that I have to talk about is the Rugrats conspiracy theory, and this was the first one that I ever read. And to be honest with y'all, to this day I still believe this, because it's really just a conspiracy theory. It's not really like a creepypasta story.
It's a fan theory.
Yeah,
it's a twisted fan
but
theory.
Its birth happened on the Creepypasta website. So that's why I feel comfortable like bringing it in.
Yeah, no, it fits.
But essentially what they the theory is that Angelica has schizophrenia and all of the babies are dead.
Yeah.
And I believe this.
I don't like this theory. I like it as a story, but like when people think it's like real, I'm like, you're ruining my childhood. Please stop. This is like my lifeblood. This Rugrats. I don't like thinking that they're dead. I don't want to think that about them.
Without like giving away too much, because like this is mainly to encourage you to go ahead and look into these creepypastas on your own, but like to kind of like I guess give like one or two away here. I have to like look back because I haven't dived into this for a long time. But like they say that Dill was never born, so he's just the idea of the baby that Stu and Dee Dee were supposed to have, and that's Angelica just kind of created that in her mind.
And Phil and Lil, I know. Betty, I couldn't remember her name. Yeah, they said she has a miscarriage, and Angelica doesn't know what gender they would have been. Girl. Maybe so she just made them twins.
Yeah.
Oh no, the only one not to be fictional was Dill.
Dill was the only one that was around. Okay, my bad, y'all. Dill was the only one that was real, but she couldn't figure out if Phil or Lil was going to be a boy or a girl, so she went ahead and created two and just made twins in her mind. And the theory stems all the way into the All Grown Ups series as well, and kind of talks about like Angelica being like a drug addict during All Grown Up, and like that she's still like is seeing all the babies and everything, but again, don't want to give too much away, so I'll just say in the end of it all, what they say is the writer of the show Rugrats is Susie Carmichael, writing the show about her now dead friend and the visions that she had while they were growing up together. So that is
definitely it's definitely
cool.
Very creative and stuff like that. I'm like anytime they mess with like the kids shows and stuff, and then like people take it to heart, like people believe like this is real, this is what they were thinking when they wrote the show. I'm like, no, they weren't. That's just some random guy that was like on the internet like, this is what I think would happen. Like the person who was writing the show was not thinking that Angelica was like schizophrenic. I can tell you that much. But that's just because I love the Rugrats, because it like means a lot to me, and like, you know, and I was like, when I first read that, I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is really creative. Like, good creepypasta. And then like I see it on BuzzFeed, people talk about it like it's real. Like, I was like, that wasn't their intention. They didn't write it like that. Like, y'all are acting like they actually wrote it with that intention. It's like, no, it's cool that somebody can look at it. Like, it's the same thing that way I feel about the Harry Potter theory, that Harry Potter was mentally ill and that he imagined Hogwarts, and people think it's real. Like, I'm like, J.K. Rowling didn't write it like that. Like, regardless of what you think about her, she didn't write it like that. It's not how the story was written. It's like, if that's what you want to think, it's fine, but it's not how it was written. So you can't go online and then say, this is real, this is the actual story they were trying to tell. It's like, no, it wasn't. It's like when you're in English class and then like somebody reads a book and they're like, the blue curtains symbolize the person's father's death. And it's like, no, they don't. No, they don't. It's like the author's like, that's not, I'm just picked blue because I was looking at a blue curtain.
Actually, maybe an interesting thing you just pointed out there without even noticing it, though, is that's how we're taught in our school system how to read into things.
Yeah, and go deep, which is great because you get great fan theories and you get great stories. Because like I love reading fan theories, but I don't like when people act like they're canon, because I'm like, unless you're sitting in a room with the writers asking them these questions, like, and I know sometimes people they'll go to like panels and they'll be like, did you intend this? And then the writer will be like, no. And then they still go online and be like, that's what they intended. I'm like, that's not what they intended. They literally just told you no. So it's like, not to dump on it. I think it's a great story. It's just like, I got sick of people acting like it was the writer's intentions when they wrote the story. If you think that when you're watching the show, that's fine. You know, if you watch the show and you think that, but don't like, I just say like, don't say that the writers wrote it with that intention. Because I don't think when they were writing a kid's show for kids, they were like, we're going to make it super dark secretly, like deep down inside. We're going to make it so they're not the Courage Cowardly Dog writers. Let's just put it that way. They're not the Courage Cowardly Dog writers.
Well, with all that being said, I still believe that the Winnie the Pooh theory is canon.
I don't know that one.
It's just essentially like each character is a representation of a different mental.
Yeah. I've seen that. It's a good theory. Yeah, it's a good theory, and it does fit. I mean, when you look at their personalities, and the guy that wrote it isn't around anymore, so we don't know. We can say whatever we want. All right. So then the last one I picked is the Russian sleep experiment. So kind of like Candle Cove, this was one that fooled me into believing that it was real. Absolutely 110%. This was back when I was using Tumblr pretty frequently. And I remember someone had uploaded to their Tumblr the entire story, but with no context. And it was spreading around on Tumblr. People were sharing it. And I sat there and I read the whole thing. And I was terrified. Mm-hmm. Like, I was literally sitting here like, this is horrible. And I had the full belief in my brain that this actually happened. So this is, the whole story is that after World War II, there were some Russian soldiers that were captured. There were some German soldiers that were captured, and they were held in Russia. Yeah. And they decided what they were going to do with them was this experiment of what would happen if you deprived the human body of sleep for a certain amount of time. So they wouldn't let them sleep. They kept them in these dark chambers that were these dark windowless chambers where they could really only see each other, but they couldn't, like, there was no light, barely any light. They did not feed them, and they observed them. And as you can imagine, it gets worse and worse progressively throughout the day. The person who wrote the story, phenomenal job, because they probably did a ton of research to what actually happens to the human body when it's deprived of sleep. Mm-hmm. Then you add deprived of sleep, light, food, and social contact. Like, these people went insane. Like, insane. And as you're reading it, it reads like a government document. Yeah. It does not read like a story, like someone's telling, like, I worked for the Russian military and I watched them do this. Like, no, it reads like a government document. So I'm reading this, and the entire time I'm reading this on Tumblr, I'm like, did this really happen? Did they really do this in Russia? Like, this is horrifying. And when it gets to the ending, like, the ending is absolutely terrifying. And I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, because we want you to go check it out yourself. As soon as I finished reading the story, I immediately went to Google, typed in the Russian sleep experiment. The first thing that popped up was Creepypasta. And I was like, mm-hmm. I was like, oh Lord. I was like, thank you. And then I found out years later that something like that did actually happen. Yeah. Something like that did actually happen. And I was like, okay, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. It's scary. The things that people do.
Because it's really funny that you brought this one up today, because I was actually, when I was first introduced to this, I was taught it in the class. Oh God. The teacher was like, yeah, here you go, here's all the material, and we're like, and like some other kid in the class was like, this is a creepypasta, and they're like, no, this really happened, and I'm like, to like some extent it did, but like
there was a similar event, and I actually just found this out like a year or so ago. There was a similar experiment, but it did not do as much as this story takes it to. It didn't get as horrifying. It was still bad, but it was a similar experiment that did happen. And then obviously, if you know about the prison experiment, you know that that governments do stuff like this, and it's terrifying and it's bad. If you ever hear about that, I think it's called the Stanford Prison Experiment or something like that. If you ever hear about that, like, or ever read about that, watched it, it's scary and it's real. That actually happens. That actually happened. And so the Russian sleep experiment, like, that was my introduction. That was like my that was the first and only creepypasta I ever like read that I fully believed. Because like I said, it was uploaded to Tumblr, no context, no like, this is a creepypasta, this is a story, this isn't real. It was just, here's the whole story. It was like pages and pages long. I was just reading, and I was literally sitting there on the computer. I was engrossed. Mm-hmm. And then it finished, and I was like, I am terrified. I am so scared. I need to Google and find out if this is real. So I Googled it. I found out that it was a creepypasta because it literally popped up and it said like Creepy Wiki is what came up. It was like Russian sleep experiment Creepy Wiki, and I was like, thank you. Mm-hmm. I was like, thank you, because I was not gonna be able to sleep tonight thinking of the images of the people that they created in my mind. Yeah, so go ahead with your last one.
My last one's a pretty iconic one that most people probably have heard of. I had to pull up this page here because I couldn't remember what installment of Legend of Zelda it was. I wanted to say Ocarina of Time, but I knew it wasn't it. But anyways, it's been drowned. So to give like a very short synopsis, because this is one you should definitely read. It's a longer read. Been Drowned is. But essentially it's just somebody had picked up a cartridge, so a copy of Majora's Mask, at a garage sale. Thank you. I wanted to say film festival, so I don't know why that came out of my mouth, but so picked up at a garage sale and just brought it home. And this particular copy is just like haunted. So there's like something weird in it where Link's face, he looks very blank, very bleak. He looks weird. If you look it up, you'll immediately see it come up on Google. There's the game starts to kind of like mess with this guy's head after a while. It's a really cool one. I don't want to give a lot away. Just if you're already a Legend of Zelda fan, I'm sure you know, that's probably being like rising up again with the new games release out right now. This is definitely a cool one to like check out, read. It's a good time all around. I know like my generation were a lot of diehard Majora Mask fans out there, so I'm sure you've already heard of it, but if somehow you escaped this, please check it out, because you'll really like it. You'll like all the references that it has to the game in there, and all the different twists and turns that it takes from the actual game as well. It's a good time.
It's also an ARG.
It is. It is an ARG. This is the only creepypasta that actually scared me. I had read it when I was staying alone at my sister's house, and I was watching my niece and nephew for like a week or something like that, and I was just like staying up by myself one night, and I'm like, yeah, let's read Ben Drowned. That sounds like a great idea. And I read it, and then like I'm looking around the house, and like their backyard is just like the woods, and I'm like, I feel like someone's watching me. I don't know why I went immediately to that, but then I just proceeded to like close every like curtain in the house and like check the kids like 20 times.
It's Blank Link.
It's Blank Link, and that's what I thought. It was like Blank Link's gonna be like staring at me from in the woods, and I just hear
oh my gosh.
Which actually, thinking about it now, that'd be pretty dope, but you know.
Yes. All right. So, and then also I wanted to give a shout out. It's not on either of our lists, but I did want to give a shout out to SCP.
Oh, yeah.
SCP is probably one of the biggest, it's not a creepypasta necessarily, but it is one of the biggest horror communities ever. It's based off of an organization that contains paranormal threats. And it's had video games, it's had tons of stories, tons of lore. You can get lost. It's hours and hours of content. Cool. So if you ever want to like get lost for an afternoon reading some pretty cool stories about like creepy paranormal things, my favorite is SCP-087B, The Staircase. They've made so many video games, and the most recent one was terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't play it. I was too scared to play it.
It was good.
But I watched Markiplier play it, and I was like, oh Lord, they remastered this game. They definitely, there goes that white face guy.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary. So I just want to give a shout out to SCP, because that is like one of my favorite like horror stories. But yeah, creepypastas in general are really awesome. If you've never read them before, checked them out before, definitely give them a chance and check them out. It's mostly stuff you can read. There are some that have spawned into YouTube series and like movies and stuff. But yeah, you can get lost in the content, and we'll leave the links below to the ones that we mentioned today. And then that way you guys can go check those out and find out if you like any of those. There's also a lot of hidden gems on there that, you know, I found out about like last couple of years that are really great.
Yeah.
Some of them are really creepy.
And I'm sure there's more being submitted all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So there's plenty of content to get lost in.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, that is going to wrap things up for this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much again for listening to today's episode.
If you like what you hear and are afraid to miss an episode, you can catch us every Wednesday at noon over on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen.
Catch up with us over on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at H for Horror Podcast, and feel free to check out our Patreon for exclusive content under the same name. Once again, I've been Schae.
And I've been Gina.
Be safe out there, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Stay spooky.